lab, we're going to be configuring AAA authentication and accounting. AAA allows organizations the ability to grant authorized users access to network devices via a centralized server and database. In today's lab, as my database, I'll be using Active Directory, and as my server, I'll be using Radius Server, both of which are configured on my Windows Server 2022 VM. Without further ado, let's hop in the lab. Okay, so before I get on to CML, I want to give you a quick walkthrough of what's going on a Windows server. Right here, I have our network policy server feature enabled. That's what allows us to run our Radius server. Now let me go to our Radius server and let you see what's going on over there. Okay, so here we are at our Radius server. This right here is the name of the Radius server, and this is the IP address of the router that we'll be enabling AAA on. Also, let me show you the user that we'll be using to access the device once we have AAA fully configured. Okay, so this right here is the user shell. And just so you know, in order to have a user in Active Directory use Radius server, you need to have dial-in configured to allow access. Okay, so here we are in our CML environment. Just a quick update. I had to change the IP address of our router from 53 to 52. All right, so now let's go ahead and configure AAA, but first let's do service password encryption so we can encrypt that key when the time comes. So service password encryption. Now let's enable AAA, AA, new model. Now let's configure our Radius server, which is Radius server, and we're going to call it Nort_Radius. Let's give it an IP address, IPv4, and this is the IP address of the Radius server, 168.1.254. Let's use 1812 for our authentication port, and let's use 1646 for our counting port. Now let's configure our key, which is Cisco. All right, now that we have that done, let's go ahead and configure our group so we can add that server to it. So the command is AA group server radius, and we're going radius, and we're going to call our group R group. Now we have to add the server, so server name, and it is Nort_Radius. There we go. So now we have a server group and a server in that group. Now let's go ahead and configure our method. So that's going to be AA authentication for login, and we want to just use default. You do have the option to give it a name. So we're going to say group and radius. All right, so now basically this is saying when we're trying to authenticate a user, we're going to first try the Radius server. If the Radius server is not available, we're going to try the local username and password that is configured on the device. Next thing I want to do is I want to allow pretty much attempts, right? How many times they can try to log in, and I'm going to give 3, which seems to be like the golden rule in IT. All right, so now that we have that configured, let's go ahead and get our VTY line ready to accept AAA. Just a heads up, if you had login local configured under the VTY line, once you enable AAA, that was essentially deleted. All right, so line VTY 015. So we're going to say login authentication, and our method, which we'll just use the default. And there we go. We have AAA configured. Now let's go ahead and test it out. All right, so here we are back on our Windows Server VM. I'm going to be using multiple putty to try and access the device to check if we configure AAA correctly. So here we go. This is the IP address of our router. So 168.1.52. We're using SSH. Name. Chev. Password. All right, so we're on. So we're going to do enable, give it the enable password, which is password. Don't judge me. And we do a show run, and we're good to go.